hard parts of the job. And I get the easy one saying like, oh yes, yeah, here's the budget, here's the space, and then just get to show up. So so this is kind of fun and daunting. But as for what you're part of tonight, you're part of an experiment, a pilot, something that hasn't obviously panels have been done before, but hopefully something a little bit different. We'll try a couple of twists on this that we'll see how it goes. And so as for me, I have the marketing consultancy, serial marketer, and had the pleasure of working with a number of folks in this room, either on the agency side, or clients, or others. And when I was talking to, there were a couple of the speakers who, just wound up in these interesting conversations about influencer marketing, and so then it's like, okay, well, you want to do an event, and how do we do this, and how do we do something that isn't just like everyone else? And in the process, I've been publishing the Serial Marketer newsletter, but more importantly, also been facilitating the serial marketers community on Slack. That I don't like to impose on anyone, but folks who like this kind of thing, and great, you're all welcome, and if not, great. But it's just how do we bring people together and talk about the challenges we're facing, and really the motto of the community that those three icons stand for are learn, try, and share. And so it's just like if you learn really one thing tonight and get to share this with others, fantastic. I'd love it if I'll send a note with some follow-ups after all this, but I'd love you to share with me just something you found interesting, or a kind of person you didn't know existed before, a company you learned about. Before we start with the panel, I also want to give a big round of thanks to Simul Media. So as you can tell, this is where you are tonight. So and I want to hand it over to Matt, who I was at something that with my alma mater, Binghamton, and we're in this space. And as soon as I got here, I'm like, I want this space. And they were and they were like, so what's your plan? I'm like, I don't know, I've never done this before. And they still said yes. So I'll turn this over to Matt. So thank you.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. Thank you all for coming. How many of you here have heard of Simul Media before? Okay. We can look at that in a couple different ways. As the head of marketing, I think I've got an opportunity. So welcome to our space. Simul Media, at a very, very simple level, we say that we're fixing television advertising. We are in the TV advertising space, and we bring a very decidedly different way of doing it relative to the last 70 years or so of television advertising. And we do that because of some very strong core beliefs that we hold. We believe that television advertising should be something that small advertisers can get into, not just the big boys. We believe that you should be able to target strategically on television rather than using the blunt instrument of a Nielsen age gender demo. We believe that you should have granularity on what happens to your television advertising after it runs, so you get a real sense of how it actually performed and not just sort of fall into the John Wanamaker, I know that half my marketing is working and half isn't, and I don't know which half. We can actually give you a point of view that makes it more intelligent. And I mentioned all of these things because before I came here, I was in the world of big tech company and big tech company ecosystems. And one of the things that I think is really remarkable and really refreshing, and you guys are all here because I think whether or not you know it, you believe it, that really the future of innovation, I believe, in our space is not going to necessarily be born out of the hulking, ginormous ecosystems that suck up so much of the dollars and the bandwidth and lately the controversy in this space. It's going to come as a result of a federation of believers. People who are ready to run up a flag, up a pole, and say, this is what I stand for. Who's with me? And I think in talking to David, you all share that sort of perspective, which, as I think about maybe one of the reasons why this has happened, is that Simul Media is right there with you. We have to raise our flag because we're asking people to take a long look at assumptions they've made about a form of advertising in television that we think can be better. So I applaud all of you for coming and for being along with David on this experiment. I'm glad that you're here, and I hope that you enjoy the evenings. Thanks again for coming.
Thanks, and for time to start coming up, and grab a seat. We'll hear a bit about what they're doing. And we'll answer some questions. And we have an extra seat here. And so here's one of the experimental things that I still don't know exactly how it's going to work, but let's try it. Because when I was on the phone with Jordan about this, and I'm like, I don't want to do just any other panel, but so just riffing on this whole serial marketer thing, like what if we had speakers come up from the audience, like involve people more? So and then I also thought, well, to invite all these panelists and then have make one of them sit down right away would be very uncomfortable. And so we have an extra seat that is for one of you who wants to join the panel. So we'll kind of get into the audience Q&A a bit earlier, and we'll see how this goes. Like there's a kind of mystery seat. We'll mix up the dynamic a little and ask some tough questions, and then just keep this going as and then go back to the conversational part of it. So I will put this down because I can't drink and ask questions at the same time. I'm not the most talented moderator there's ever been. This will not help me as much as my kid is helpful. But why don't you all introduce yourselves first, and Brandon, I'll start with you. What you're doing, I think it's pretty easy for you all to say your connection to influencer marketing, and we'll go from there.
Sounds good. Well, thank you for having me. Great to meet everyone and re-meet some people. I'm Brandon Perlman. I'm the founder and CEO of Social Studies, formerly the Graham List. We just rebranded about 6 weeks ago. And what we do is we use historical data to really lay a foundation of historical analysis on the influencer landscape specific to Instagram. What our kind of ethos comes down to is we exist to empower the next generation of digital marketers with the intelligence necessary to transform branded communication. And in the world of social studies and the study of social media, the goal is really to become the Bloomberg for digital marketing, to have an agency that can execute, to have software and data that can back up claims that we want to make, and have a publishing platform that can really tell unique stories that are happening in the social ecosystem that is encroaching on nearly half the planet right now. So there's a lot of really interesting stories to be told.
Todd, please.
Hi everybody. I'm really lucky because I've known most of you guys for many years, and for a reason, I've been teaching at the Fashion Institute of Technology for about 10 years. Most of my students have gone on to become very successful influencers, upwards of 500,000 followers, and what I like to call them friends. I think that we need to remember that having influence means being part of the community and being a trusted source. So that being said, I yesterday launched a personal workshop series. It's called Growth Series by Rethink Connect. And the purpose is to focus on personal branding and support you if you're looking to become an influencer, or if you want to work with influencers. We are able to tackle both challenges through educational opportunities.
Amazing, thanks. Jennifer?
So by show of hands, how many of you here know an influencer, or you are an influencer? Awesome, thank you for being here. So my name is Jennifer Lee Chang. I'm the CEO, co-founder of Newsfund. We are democratizing influencer marketing. So we built a SaaS turnkey platform that allows any brand, big or small, to be able to engage their end consumer by leveraging networks of micro influencers. We're officially partnered with Etsy, Shopify, and what's next for us is WooCommerce and Salesforce. And I've written and published a book on influencer marketing. So if you guys want to send me a DM on Newsfind on Instagram, I'll send you all a free copy of it on PDF. Thanks for having me.
My name is George Hirsch. I'm the founder of Mainframe Interactive. We're an agency handling strategy and investment, but I'm pretty much the agency's voice on this panel, just giving the insights from anything from strategy, community, investment, fraud, etc.
And one thing that
I'm the
I'm
gatekeeper.
and one thing that I'm of course now thinking of, but Jennifer, you reminded me of this. That I'll make sure any links you want to share after this, I'll send to everyone on the Eventbrite. If you're not on the Eventbrite, then just make sure to email me, find me, tell your friend who brought you here, and we'll spread that around. So things like your book are great, and social handles, and all that good stuff. We'll send the fudge recipes. We'll send all this stuff after. I'm gonna ask a question now that I kind of wanted to ask, but I'm going to blame someone in this room for it and not mention their name because they might not want me to. But this is one of the first things that came up in conversation in a room full of people interested in the subject. You can raise your hand if you like. I'm not even going to look in their direction. But are influencers the worst?
No. What does that mean? Can you expand on that?
Because these days influencers themselves are getting such a bad reputation, and you open outlets like The Atlantic and the New York Times, and the person who brought this up to me here was like, "Wow, like I like influencer marketing, I just don't like influencers." And there's this kind of like anti-influencer, this influencer backlash that I feel is happening. You could disagree with the entire premise, but I'm seeing it out there. And I thought it would be kind of a fun place to start. And so, Dolly, given that you came right out with the opposite, please.
So I think we have to remember that in our own regard, we are all influencers. We influence everybody's decisions, regardless of whether or not we choose to. People are going to ask you your opinion, and you're going to say, I like this place, I don't like this place. We have influence. I think the bigger that you get, the higher you're put on a pedestal and the higher the expectations are. And unfortunately, you have to meet some of those expectations. I think that we have to be okay with holding people to a higher standard, but we also have to be okay with the fact that people make mistakes, and if by a chance their course that they released didn't go exactly the way that they expected it to, they will issue refunds and they will apologize for it. And we can't fault an entire ecosystem for something that 1 to 5 people have made a mistake with, right? I think that mistakes happen, they apologize for it, but we as people are influencers. Celebrities have been influencers for many years. They make mistakes and they apologize for it, and no, they're not the worst, because I actually think we're only going to grow from here. I actually believe that eventually technology is going to allow us to generate revenue off of the recommendations that we share.
I think it's great that there's polarization in the industry, because I think 4 years ago there was no such, a lot of people didn't even know what influencer marketing was. It was a new concept. It wasn't even on the budget lines. I remember walking into VaynerMedia and speaking with their team at Oreo, and they're like, we don't know where to pay this out of, maybe our PR budget. So I think it's a positive thing when you see polarization. The other side of it is that, the oversaturation of the influencer economy is happening. And that's because it's so easy to become an influencer. It's so easy to gamify your numbers. So a lot of brands now are asking for harder metrics than just impressions, engagements, and comments. They're looking for real ROI and real stats. And they want that. And pretty soon influencers have no choice but to get that, to deliver that, and to be able to track that themselves.
And to join Valerie's point there, it's just word of mouth at the end of the day. And word of mouth can be quantified. Before influencer marketing was a thing, kings and queens were influential in their own ways. Celebrities were influential in their own ways. My grandmother was influential to her friends in her ability to sell $100 skin cream 100% of the time, simply because she was great. She has no social audience whatsoever. 10 years ago when social came about, bloggers were the first entry point into this. And as bloggers started to cultivate audiences on their own platform or on other platforms, thus grew the birth of the influencer. But our approach has always been that there are stories to be told kind of underneath, and the micro-influencer play and the nano-influencer play is really where we're kind of focused on, and that there's data to be shared around inadvertent actions. Where are you going? Where are you posting from? Who are you with? Who else is in the photo? What hashtags are you using? All this other information that can be sussed out to really boil down where are people going, where are trends. But the data is only one piece of the puzzle, you need real people, real humanity that pick it apart and tell stories on top of that. So, yes, in a way, influencers can be the worst, but at the same time, you don't have to work with the ones who are the worst because you can always find more. So.
That's
Yeah, I think, again, I'm coming from the agency side, so when you say influencers of the workers, no, not at all. Influencers, it depends on how you look at it. Our group has been doing media for almost 15 years, and it's funny that Brandon said word of mouth. It wasn't even called influence, it was called word of mouth back in the day. Not only whether there wasn't a line item for word of mouth, there wasn't even a line item for digital back then. My first campaign was the premiere of Sex and the City and The Sopranos, and it was word of mouth, and it was social. And there was no way to quantify word of mouth back then because you're not essentially buying impressions, you're not buying engagements or actions. You're giving either product or information to someone to share. And this is going to go into the next question, is like, this is also going to be this problem that influencer has, where you sit in the budget line item, has plagued influencers since the beginning.
I didn't know that's my next question.
I just, because when you think of influencers the worst, it's not necessarily influencers are the worst. It's also how does a publisher and able to communicate to an agency the value of influence, and that's the biggest problem we've seen in media since the beginning. And this is going back like late 90s. Is how do you quantify? And what influencer has been trying to do is be like other media to get on that budget sheet, to get that budget. Because everything's about that flow chart, and that flow chart that goes to the client and gets signed up. So, and I'm going to touch on this later, is that it's almost like a food chain of who's the best and who's the worst, but everyone's sharing in responsibility from the agency to the influencer to the publisher of meeting expectations and delivering.
And this is also weird because I wouldn't get past a lot of this one-on-one. Like, we're not going to try to spend an hour defining what an influencer is.
And I don't want to, and nor should you.
Yeah.
Nor should you, and that's the biggest problem. That's the biggest issue, is that influencer, using the term influencer, and I'm going to get into this, is hurting itself by only labeling as influence. Influencer for us as a strategy investment component is the most important thing out of all media, and we rarely use it to influence as activation. We use it more for data on audiences, to better learn about audiences. So we relate it directly back to our communities and the communities.
And so I want to take things a couple steps ahead and maybe further than where we intended to go. But you're coming out there. What's also amazing is that you're also coming out there with things like you're talking about storytelling, the value of people. You're bringing the ROI thing up in the first 2 minutes, and like no one does that in an influencer thing, and how they fit in the media plan, influencers and publishers, regardless of even exactly what you're doing right now. How in the world you want to work in, and the way you want to work, how much do you think we should be focused on this very? How much do you want to be focused on the hard ROI as the driver for? Like, what does it look like? Like, what are those main hallmarks of success that you want to be focused on, regardless of even what you and your clients and others are doing this right now? Like what's that ideal for you? Where do you want to take those that you work with? And so,
I can kick it off. I think that we need to start earlier, and we have to remember that the marketing funnel exists, and that all of these initiatives have to align with what's on that marketing funnel. Can you really quantify and create an ROI for awareness? No, but if people don't know about you, do you exist, right? So I think that all of your objectives should align with the marketing funnel and focus there, and be able to build out plans to target each piece of that.
to clarify, when I said ROI, I didn't mean hard sales matter, but I think in the day it's also does the influencer have a good professional rapport with you? Are they communicative? Do they respond to their emails within a 24-hour span? All that stuff isn't tracked. Like every time you are meeting an influencer, that's all a black box. You don't have that in history. All you have is their previous sponsored posts, maybe their Instagram. So what we're building internally is LinkedIn for influencers. So they can have all those reports, have those stats there. So when they're pitching a brand, they're not left in the dark, and the brand can make a better decision on if this is the influencer they want to partner with.
To that point, we built some technology very early on that can basically boil the ocean of data and kind of build a CRM. So if you think of the influencer landscape, it's kind of divided into platforms and CRMs. How people get on the platforms is another thing. And then it's agents and agencies. And on the agency side, you have individuals representing large influencers, but a few of them typically known for having high quality content, and they're very expensive. On the flip side, you have platforms and CRMs. The CRMs, you have to do all the work yourself. You've got to load it all up with everybody you're working with. The platforms, full of people, 10,000, 50,000, 100,000, a million people, whatever it might be. But you've got a defined network of people. Bots often go out and they say, hey, want to give you free stuff. They raise their hand and say yes. So there's not really a lot of authenticity when it comes to that. So with us, our approach has always been, we're not representing anyone, we can represent everyone. So if Sweetgreen wants to open in Houston, or if Related is trying to sell high-end real estate in the North Loop of Chicago, or if Outdoor Voices wants to open in Aspen, or if Aspen wants to know who's skiing on their mountain and then understand where those people over the 4th of July, it's really kind of about reading the tea leaves and the interactions in between the posts. So who is where when is really an interesting place. And when it comes down to the ROI setting and the KPIs, for me, the simplest ROI is content and content at scale. Because, in the old days, you had to hire a photographer, and that photographer had to hire an assistant and equipment and go and photograph a couple branded assets, and you had a couple assets that you had the rights to, and then you could repurpose those assets how you wanted. But if you could work with 100 or 200 or 1,000 people in any given day, week, or month and generate a lot of assets and a lot of content and be able to look at how did that content that they perform organically, and then how did that perform with a hashtag ad, and then see the differential between how that content performed organically versus the ad, and then later on the boosting piece, which we'll get to a little bit later. But it's really kind of about what do you want that return on investment to be? Is it about awareness? Is it just about sales? Or is it about kind of something in between? But the simplest one to break it down to is just great content that you can own at the end of the day, that's seen by a lot of people, that we were repurposed in an innumerable amount of ways.
And Jordan?
I'm gonna take a different approach. I think it's really important that the agency defines influencer's role with the publisher, because it doesn't matter what vehicle or platform you use. Your objectives and goals have to align with what platform. So personally, I would use influencer to deliver actions or acquisitions. Why? Because if there isn't paid media behind influencer, not just paid media behind hard costs, you're limited with where your reach and action will be compared to any paid media platform. It's critically to define the role of influencer on the agency side with the publisher, and publishers need to make it much easier to sell it in to agencies, to clients.
You just define publisher real quick.
Publisher, tech provider. So, for example, provider. You're a seller, I'm a buyer. So, seller, buyer. Seller needs to communicate, not you, but influencer as a whole, the vertical, needs to do a lot better job at illustrating what makes influencer so important on that medium plan. And putting it up against, like you said, acquisitions, actions, it will get killed. You can't compare engagements and actions versus doing like a video buy or doing a direct response buy. You just can't. So the strategy along with the seller needs to be what is influencer's role. For example, the most successful thing we do with influencer is search. The reason why is because the content you create with your influencers, of which the keywords I know is going to make a difference against my competitors, is what's going to give me the advantage in search, which is the most important platform for acquisition. So influencer is critical for us on every plan, not just to analyze audiences to find an advantage, but also how it affects search and what people search for.
But doesn't that live on like the awareness tab of the marketing funnel? So
Yes.
So like basically you just want them to communicate that they're building awareness through X strategies.
Yeah, I don't sell influencer. That's really important because awareness can be quantified. So awareness can be quantified by impressions. This is another issue influencers get into is they conflate reach, their audience reach, with impressions of two different things. How many people that are part of an influencer's community is not how many people you're going to reach. And that's a huge problem because that's how influencer gets sold in as, that these hundreds of thousands of people are going to see your media. That's just not true, because an impression is not equivalent to reach. It's very, very, very important. But going back to influencer with an agency has to define its role and be careful about the platforms that it butts up against. Like I would never put influencer up against an acquisition action vehicle. I carve out a place specifically for this is how you as a brand are going to be found. We're going to work with not all the influencers, but this select group of influencers and work on content, work on these keywords, work on this messaging so it will be found by consumers. And that's like clear-cut way that you could show not only ROI, but like plus or minus lift through the roof. That's the biggest thing that's worked for us in the last years. Again, I use influencer, this is coming back, we use influencer for so many different things. I'm hard on influencer because it has potential to be the most powerful form of media overall media right now. And I could go into that it's media that can never be ad blocked. It's media that doesn't have an end date. It's there forever. But the people in control of, there's a major disconnect between the people that are selling influencer, people that are buying influencer, and the brand that are just like, fuck, do I do?
But I mean, there's a lot of important issues, and one you all touch on in some way is the role of paid media. And you talk to some folks where it's like all influencer marketing is just a media buy, and what's the CPM? Maybe they want to know
That's the problem. That's been the problem forever. I can't tell you how hard it was even before influence became a thing. We had iPhone, the launch of iPhone. I'll never forget this. AT&T was a client, the launch of iPhone, and they didn't want to do an influencer campaign using the first iPhone. We were at the first Green Festival, and this was before Obama was voted in office. It was run by Dan Jones. It was called Broadway. This was the launch of the iPhone, and we were like, look, we want to do this backstage program with bloggers and influence and yada yada yada. We didn't even call it influence because it didn't really have a big name, and it took forever to sell it in. The client was just like, no, I can't quantify it, and I'll never forget. And I come from a background like big ideas and content, and that taught me a valuable lesson that you could have the best idea. Shit, this was the iPhone, the first iPhone. Like no one could predict it was the iPhone, but it's very difficult for people to stand behind your idea if they can't see the value and able to champion it internally. And honestly, like as great an idea I thought it was, there really wasn't a way to quantify it.
So,
Why?
so Jeff, for you and how Use Find works, I mean, is it like, is it just a CPM kind of buy, or where does paid media fit in?
Yeah, we used to, I mean, we worked with full service clients that were like Children's Place, Aiden and A, much larger. And when we developed a SaaS platform, it was because we heard a lot of smaller e-commerce companies saying, I want to use influencer marketing, but the gate to enter is so high. I mean, for them, the only way to access an influencer is scrolling on their Instagram, DMing them, going to an agency, and often they can't afford the fees. I'm getting some head nods here, this is good. So for us, we talk to small businesses, they do expect ROI. I mean, they don't have, you know, outrageous expectations like 30 days, 90 days, 60 days even. It's pretty reasonable. I think it's reasonable to put that against any type of marketing. And for them, it was like, look, I want a way to track ROI. Even if I get nothing the first month, I want to know my money's put to somewhere. And you see that now with like affiliate programs being more and more popular with influencers. You see that there's longer term relationships with an influencer and a brand directly. And I think it's, I mean, we're playing in a much different market than I think the three other people that are here in the panel are saying with me, but I think that this is a market that's underserved. And it's a market that's growing rapidly. So 7 months ago when we launched the SaaS platform, in 7 months, we're almost at 9,000 brands. And they've hired 23,000 influencers on their own, which is crazy.
And is paid media even a part of it?
No, they've
That's where I'm gonna.
Yeah, well, let me finish first. So for the influencers, when they're hired, there are tracking codes that are used. However, for paid media, I mean, of course they're doing their Facebook ads, they're doing other ads. It's just at a smaller scale. But these are 47 million e-commerce companies out there, and that's not stopping. Every brand's going to have an online presence, and we're going to live in every single person's dashboard.
But okay, so say you have, everyone knows what an acquisition campaign is, right? You know, you're paying this and you must deliver this. If you're doing an influencer campaign within your platform, and I need 50,000 registrations, you could guarantee 50,000 registrations?
We're not, so we don't guarantee that.
See, that's the issue.
Yeah.
That you're gonna, that
I think we're
influencer.
also playing different fields where like we're serving the 5-person, 10-person e-commerce companies of which there are millions of, and that for them is not the biggest
Okay,
registration.
300.
Yeah, well, I'm not going to sit here and talk to you about like numbers and guarantee, but the expectation, I'm telling you what brands expect, and I can see that there are a few people in this room, and they expect a way to track the ROI. Like I'm not making this up. This is from user research.
No, I
This
agree
is
with you.
right, and I understand for Children's Place, pay by phone. I mean, these was a client, these jeans. I understand for them it was about paid media. I completely understand,
Right.
and it was about the impressions. I'm just saying, in my range of where we are now, and we're experiencing our growth, it's a different conversation.
Right, and some of those are actually my former students or current students. So yeah, I agree with you 100%.
Agree about I'm not following. So I'm Children's Place, and I need 500 parents to sign up, and I've hired.
I just said that Children's Place is a different model from the
Well,
current.
Don, where were you
I'll
going?
introduce you to MuseFind later, but we can probably move on.
Yeah, with
I think
your
he's focused very heavily on conversions, right? This goes
No,
back,
I'm focused on delivery.
but delivery is
And-
conversions.
No, it's not. A
If you're
delivery
looking for
could be-
500 signups, that's a conversion. You want to see
a delivery
something.
could be whatever the KPI I as the agency buying that you're delivering. So
But what if the KPI is awareness?
Don, why don't you just run with where you want to take things, and then we'll.
well, it's important to have this dialogue because this is the number one issue I think the sell side and the buy side has, is that we accept things as facts. I can't tell you how many case studies I read, and I'm just like, this is. So it's very, very important to be able to, answer those questions from the fundamental sides of quantifying. Is this qualitative place that I need to bid?
How do you quantify celebrities?
What does that mean? What do you mean quantify celebrities?
So I just happened to read something about Madonna today. Let's say you wanted to work with Madonna. How do you quantify a budget for her, and what are the expectations?
So I'm proposing working with. I would never propose to working with Madonna.
Okay, so you give me an example.
It wouldn't be my media strategy.
I'd love to.
No, but it wouldn't be my media strategy. Why? Because it's saturated. And look, if anything you buy, if you're on that tip of I don't know what it could deliver. It's going to deliver content. It's very difficult for the buy side to stand behind it and sell that into the content. And that's been influencers' problem since the beginning, is that this is what you're buying, this is what you're getting, and then this is how we're over-delivering.
Okay, so to work with influencers in a smaller model, again, even just building awareness is valuable, because if they don't know, like if people don't know about these small businesses, these SMBs,
Right.
there's value there, right?
Absolutely,
So,
absolutely.
But that's what we're talking about. So it's not
Right,
really-
okay, so what is the awareness? I just gave you, again,
Well-
50K, but this is a 50K budget,
Mhm.
and you're delivering awareness. What is that awareness? Yeah,
So-
I would think it's impressions.
Well, I think
you can't guarantee impressions.
I want to kind of go to Brandon as a tiebreaker here. I love that. Heroes Madonna, so that. But you also brought up an interesting counterpoint. I don't even know what it was at this point.
It's important what you're saying.
Yeah, but you talked about the value of content in its own right. But content like when you look at the marketing funnel or where acquisition fits, it doesn't always have a neat little
Correct. So,
area.
thank you. If you look at the smallest approximation of the addressable market for influence right now, it's $2 billion. So if you think about $2 billion, that is pretty much working with about approximately 10% of possible brands. We as a company are working with 0.1% of those 10%. So the market is massive. So if we're talking about 0.1%, 1%, these are challenger brands, really advanced, direct-to-consumer, venture-backed. ROI is important, but I have a feeling that your clients are much bigger and
Not at all.
they're seeking
Not at
something
all.
different.
Client side from this to this. It has to do with quantifying. Anytime you have a budget, unless it's creative, if it's media, it needs to be quantified. Period.
Yeah. So
Period.
media is
Like,
only one.
There's no question about
I'd
that.
say media is
Otherwise, I'm not
probably
buying.
20%. Perfect. There's plenty of other people to work with. So I'd say that media is one piece of the puzzle, but content is another piece. People need content for legitimacy. They need content for ad campaigns. They need content for marketing. They need content for out of home. They need content for really everything. Lower funnel attribution is a key piece to really think through, where is the content coming from? Who's creating it? How do you get as close to that as possible? And what is the point at the end of the day? And it's really sometimes just content for content's sake. Because content equals legitimacy. It equals brand. It equals advocacy. It equals all sorts of other things. Whereas ticket sales and
Well, to take
3,000
on to that
emails,
really quickly,
drivers.
I agree. I want to let you talk, but 30 seconds to tag on to that. I think we forget the value of creating content. It's hard. It's hard to take a great photo. It's hard to make sure that everything looks in sync and looks perfect. And there are content creators that are doing this for a living. So I spoke on a panel at the Devon Center in November, and I had a beauty brand on my panel, and they said we worked with a content creator and we boosted that post. There was a lot of value in getting that content, and then they were able to support it with an ad spend. And I think we forget about how important it is.
That's exactly what I was going to say.
That's
Which is
Susan.
I'm Susan Getkin, and I've been doing this since God made dirt, actually, probably. Since back when it was called Blogger Relations. Does anybody remember that part? When it was Blogger Relations? See, that's how long ago it was. And I think that's the fundamental thing that we're missing, is that every influencer is actually a customer. And so back to your first question, are customers the worst? If any company ever said that, I would never want to work with that company, right? So what we're creating with influencer content is an endorsement of some kind, right? And treating paid as a dirty word on top of that is where the mistake happens. The organic creation of the content is sort of fuel. And I don't mind that in my business I have to boost to find new audience, or I have to boost to find the right audience, or I have to boost to get the conversion, because it's not bad that it's both pieces of it. I mean, I work for a publisher, right? For a media company that we do influencer marketing as part of that. But we don't have to, it doesn't have to be bad that someone only has a few followers, because if I'm the brand and I think, wow, that was a damn good post, it's worth me putting some money into getting that a larger audience. And as a brand, I'm actually bringing value back to that influencer because I found them more audience. So to think that there's got to be one right way to look at this, there actually isn't. Because in any given population, there are good people and they're the worst.
Wanna come on up? All right, we have our fifth panel.
We have another
We
one.
have another one. We have
one.
another one. Go. Do you have one more?
Do you want to go?
So I'm joining the panel, I guess.
Do you want to talk?
Well, I was just gonna ask back to your original question. What we understand that I had an ad tech background for many years, so I understand the agency side.
And what's
very
your
well.
name?
Karina Moises from Miami. And I realize that there's a lot of discrepancy between how to quantify and metrics and all of that. And now with this very new, what we call influencer marketing, it's technology catching up and making sure there are metrics to support that. And that's going to be an ongoing thing. Every time something new comes up, technology needs to catch up. And so what are the sort of metrics and sort of types of buys, not talking about CPM, or maybe it is CPM, that we can look at or we should expect when we are talking about smaller brands, SMBs, that do want the awareness at this level, right?
Yeah, definitely technology. That's a good question. Thank you. I think there's a lot of catching up for technology, and I think it's also in part the influencers. I mean, a lot of times brands don't tell influencers how much value they're bringing in, and they hide those numbers. And I think influencers are getting better and better asking them for that now, and be able to stand up. And we've seen media kits of influencers knowing their numbers. Like, I brought in X amount of sales for this brand. I brought in X amount of clicks for this brand. I've delivered X amount of email subscribers for this brand. And I think as the SMB markets demand for more and more of that, because you can't walk into a small business and tell them, like, yeah, I think you'll get awareness and that's it, or engagement, because they know that stuff can be gamified.
And where are they getting that from?
So for now,
Platforms and small
right.
media.
So right now, for the influencers today, is that what you're asking?
Right, where are the influencers getting that data from?
So there's some who are really savvy. They're building in their own affiliates, or they're doing their own tracking, or they ask for a code and then they want to see what that's coming in as. And they're now providing those numbers on their media kits.
Right.
But the thing is,
we're
that
also
it's-
the affiliate networks. too,
Exactly,
right?
affiliate networks. But yeah, I mean, small businesses and tell them it's awareness, it won't fly. They'll just walk away from it.
So,
And we are at a shift where we're not talking about fake potential reach anymore, which is the thing that's driving. This is my followers are millions and millions and millions of followers. Impressions of actually who saw a post is becoming much more important to me. When we create metrics for clients, we don't create them based on how many followers the influencers have. We create them based on how many impressions, how many views the post actually had. Because true engagement is how many people who actually saw something engaged with it, not how many people who might have potentially in some weird possible vision of the world could have seen it because there's millions and millions of followers. Because nobody really has the amount of humans following them the number says. There's some amount of fake and fraud and or just bots, Russian bots. Have you heard of those?
and
No, that's
just-
really important what you said, because that's going back to your buy, what you're getting out of your buy. And organic influencer can't guarantee what that buy is going to deliver with a number. So for example, we work with this influencer company, and at the beginning of the campaign, he said, you're going to have this many impressions. And I said, you can guarantee this? Absolutely. And as the campaign progressed, that number was less than 0.5% that he put in the proposal. And every word that he used, long tail, the green, just stuff made up on the spot. And that's a big problem because agencies that aren't educated on the fundamentals of advertising and asking questions go, okay, yeah, that sounds great. And you can tell that this speed was something that he had down very fast, very quick. So I'm going back to the buy side. It's your job to know the fundamentals and ask the questions, because again, if you do put money down on something, you need to be able to quantify it in media terms. Right? It's a media buy. which means you're backing it out into, if it is awareness, then it's impressions, then it's a CPM, then you're evaluating that CPM versus other platforms.
So, David, I've known you for many, many years. You spoke on the first panel that I ever hosted at FIT. You are a spectacular marketer. What fascinates you about influencers?
Well, thanks. I want to hear more from you, but where's Leo? So, hey Leo. Oh, there. He's taking good pictures. So Leo and I work together at 360i. We were working with clients like Bill and so it was also funny because like we were doing this when it was this whole like what we call the digital word of mouth, right? Then and that was like 360i trademark, so I'm not sure we can even use that. But just this whole idea of building relationships and doing so in a way that and for us it was HGTV, it was another and NBC where Bill was like our second client in this. And so how do we deal with people and put them front and center? Like that's what really fascinated me, and this is also why. And then instead of influencers being the worst, then the line that started to come up on the agency side was mommy bloggers are the worst. And it's not so much they were bad; they were the first to demand to be paid for their value, right? And so agencies don't like paying for things, and so like the first ones to go raise their hand and say, "I should be paid for this." Actually,
that's a good point. That is a really good point. We forget about the fact that people don't want to get paid for things, and people want to get paid for things, and people don't want to pay out for things. And we have to remember that shifts the conversation, right?
So I do want to go back over the one question that I'm so curious about right now, and like this here and now. And I kind of mentioned last minute before the panel that I really have no clue where it's going. So this is one of those I just want to learn from smart people kind of thing. And really, if you have thoughts on this, please clue me in.
Come over and take the
yeah. So there's this push that seems more and more real of major platforms starting to hide things like follower counts, like counts. Right? So Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, I mean, these were built on popularity contests and a lot of gamifying that and some fraud that maybe we'll get into more, but bots have come up here. And now a lot of these platforms are seeing just some of the ill effects of that, and they want to, and so there are these active tests going on of hiding that, and that means hiding it from external parties, from platforms. Is this real? Is this going to happen in earnest, especially with these major platforms? How does it affect you and the kind of marketing and the work you're doing? What is it that marketer is this just a kind of scare scenario? Is this something that marketers should be preparing for? What does this really mean? Because I think to me it seems like a really, really big deal.
So, it's actually happened in the beginning, and they're just called private accounts. And half of the billion accounts on Instagram are private. So, but the eyeballs and the people, as long as they're not bots, are still real, and the content that's being created is real. Now, granted, to the data, you're invisible, but you are still actually on the receiving end of a message. And you still have just as much, their money is just as green as anybody else's. So, I think that there is a lot of conversation happening with the platforms around psychology and bullying and the psychic trauma that an entire generation is growing up with, being measured and scored. And I'm sure a lot of us in this room have seen that Black Mirror episode, which is fantastic, about this world kind of gone mad in an interesting way, and what happens at the end is really fantastic.
Not to mention the people who fall off of towers and off of mountains and various different things. I mean,
or the impact that it has on our national resources by tagging specific locations. Jackson Hole, one of my favorite places in the world, has created an active government-backed effort to prevent geotagging from happening, to keep natural places natural. So content is content. You're going to go places you're going to go at the end of the day. Whether or not a platform removes likes and comments, frankly, I'm cool with, because it just makes what me and my business do more valuable, because you could have a map to Yellowstone, which is great, but it's a big place, but wouldn't you rather have a guide and glamping and all this awesome other stuff that comes with the managed service side of things? I don't know. But so it's just going to really make the need to suss out and make more sense, the storytelling piece more valuable with or without the likes or comments.
I don't think they're ever going to get rid of all the social capability. Or I think likes is sort of the criminal at the moment, because at least everything I've read says mostly it's about taking the count of the likes away, not necessarily taking the likes away. So it still has the ability for you to express that you like that piece of content. So the content creator still can get that a girl that this was a great piece of content, and it's just taking away that ability to sort of have that little counter that's so easy to gain. Comments are so. The arguments that went around when the first news came out was it's going to change the way social existed. Blah 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 blah. You still can comment, you still can like, you can still engage with content. We're not taking away, just because one platform doesn't want to show likes because, again, people are falling off of buildings because of it. It's not going to change the social nature of, because being social is actually a fundamental human desire, right? The fact that social media has taken off the way it has isn't because it's media, it's because it's social. And we want to be social.
I'm quoting that.
It's one of my, I guess, feel free. And so we will find another way to find that outlet if Instagram turns off likes. I mean, it's not going to go away. Where I think that we do have to sort of push back as brands, as advertisers, as publishers, as whatever, is that the data should still be available to me. If it's my account, or if I hired you to do something, I should still be able to see that, to understand whether it worked. It doesn't need to be displayed publicly to have that whole public effect happen, but I don't want to lose track of, I mean, I don't know how many of you are active on doing any kind of programs on Instagram, but the fact that I can't get impressions data from Instagram has been driving me crazy for the last 18 months or something. So, we do need the data in order for these platforms to continue to grow, but I don't think we necessarily need to have all of it public.
I actually think we're going to see a shift in user behavior. I think we're already starting to see that shift, where if you're not posting for the likes, then you can post more meaningful content. So you can storytell a little bit better visually. You can storytell a little bit better contextually, as opposed to saying, "I need to get a post up right now," and rushing to get something posted. So I think because of that, we will focus on creating stronger connections because it's meaningful content that people relate to.
How many here is anyone here Canadian? Yes, one person. So, another person. So, I'm Canadian, and in Canada they're doing this because Canada has the same population as the whole state of California. So the likes have been removed, and I think it builds a great case going back to content, going back to merit, going back to what are ways of tracking if there aren't numbers or things that you can necessarily see right away. So I think it adds the story of the content value it builds into it.
Well, as he's shaking your head, this is great, and it's time's flying faster than expected. I do want to get a few more questions you have in there. We'll do a couple of speed rounds, and I want to make sure you have time at least to chat a little bit more one-on-one with each other and enjoy some of my kids' food. And not her wine though. It's not her wine. She's not responsible for that.
Because I can't keep my mouth
Well,
closed on this topic.
I'm so glad this was an empty chair and this thing kind of works. So it's perfect. Is there other questions from audience? Anything you want to bring up? A point you wanted to make? Yes, please.
How is it like working with micro influencers and macro influencers?
Micro versus macro influencers.
I'll take that from the agencies. I'll take that. For the agency side, we always look at micro. And the reason why, and this is just going back, it has to do with, are you familiar with composition of your target? So when you do a media plan, you look at properties and you want to know, this is my audience, what composition of that, what is the composition of that site of my audience? Almost always a micro community is going to be high in composition. Why? Because it's fewer people that have a deep passion about that topic. The other amazing, so that's one. So for us, what we do when we work with clients is we deliver, we call ownable media. This is where you're going to have a high share of voice as opposed to waiting in line and being just another brand that's hiring influencers. We like owning stuff. Micro influencers has always been the way to go about that. The second part of that is when you're working with less influencers, not only is it less of a headache, because there's a lot that goes into it, whether you're creating content, whether you're writing copy, you're tagging, and then you have to work with them. But smaller amount of influencers give us the kind of fuel that we need to deliver on a specific objective. Whereas macro, it's harder, you know what I mean? It's harder, it's less personable, it's less approach. So from the agency side and buy side, that's critical for us. We always look at micro because you could do more. It's also less money. You have more of an impact.
I don't think there's a bad or a good. I think that micro-influencers or nano-influencers, if you want to talk about it, have fit a certain KPI or a certain kind of activation, a certain thing that you might want to do. Activating the audience as opposed to the publisher. Because, I mean, these people are also publishers, right? They're publishers of content. Celebrity influencers have their place too. I mean, there's times when you actually get the best bang for whatever your buck is by working with someone, Madonna, our example earlier. So who you work with and how you do it, in my opinion, always goes back to what are you trying to achieve? What is the brand goal in this particular thing? What's your KPI? How are you going to do it? And just knowing that the micro-influencer, that nano person, is more likely to actually be the customer, and that big guy is more actually likely to be able to be doing it on behalf of their audience. But that's okay, as long as you know that and that's what you're trying to accomplish, it's all good. Because we're all influencers. I mean, I think what you're doing is really cool. I mean, just the idea of, because most of us in this business are chasing the same top 10% of companies that make $1 million or more, right? And then there's all these other companies that make $1 million a year or less that still want to do this. I think enabling them to tap into this is really, really super, super cool.
Thank you. It's an honor. It's really fun to talk to you.
So, you know, because it's there for all of us. So it just depends what you want to do. And that's where it always goes back for me is, what's your goal? Because if you don't actually know, I still have a blog, I just don't write on it anymore. It's called Marketing Roadmaps, and it was from Lewis Carroll. And you will get you have to know where you're going. Because if you don't know where you're going, you don't know where the goal is, you're never going to get there. So that's my opinion. They're both good. It's all good.
Anything else from the audience? Yeah, please, Scott.
So I guess one comment first and then a question. Much of the debate has been around metrics and budgets and whatnot. And to me, it actually it's not that confusing. I mean, there's paid, earned, and owned media, and I think as long as influencer marketing tries to stay within the owned and the earned media space, there are metrics and budgets that have come for decades that this translates very well into. So I don't see influencer marketer needing to necessarily compete for paid media. And ultimately, the most successful campaign is going to be conversion media, a combination of all three. So that's a comment. Question. When it comes to, I think, nobody wants to be influenced. All right? I mean, nobody wants to be sold to. So I think there's a branding issue with the entire influencer marketing. I mean, imagine meeting somebody and you're like, hey, what do you do? I'm an influencer. I mean, wow, good for you. Like, great. I don't really want to hang out with. I want to be influenced tonight. So I think there's great. Fantastic. Go talk to somebody else. So anyway, despite the brand issue, and related to that, authenticity is key. It's absolutely critical. So what do you see happening in the business and within the influencer realm that helps to ensure authenticity? So that the influencer is more effective, and of course it's being respectful of their audience.
I think with micro-influencers, you'll see that they often are very selective with who they work with because their followers are a much smaller group and much closer. So to take a risk by working with a brand that's not aligned with them is huge because their equity, their bank account is their social community. So I do see the micro influencers and nano influencers being far more selective than perhaps a macro or someone's much bigger, because they probably know that their audience is far more diluted. Yeah, but that answers
But
your
don't they
question.
also reference themselves not as an influencer, but as a blogger, right?
You know what? An influencer.
creator.
Yeah, the thing is, no one's mentioned here that an influencer is actually their own brand, and when you talk to an influencer, they operate like a little business themselves. And the smaller the influencer, the more behaviors they show, like a startup and a small business owner, the larger they get, they act naturally like a corporation or something or otherwise. So I think the risk for a small business owner on both sides as a branded influencer, they're far more selective when working with companies and brands. So I think that helps with the authenticity issue in some respects. But of course, you're always going to find that dilution in any type of marketing.
I want to take it from the other side. For me, it's like, first off, I hate the word influence. I've always hated it. I keep a running note in my phone on different synonyms for the word influence. I've come up with some really good ones, but never really landed on the perfect one yet. I'll get there. But I want to take the opposite approach. My background is magazine journalism. A magazine is a brand at the end of the day. It is, what separates Vogue from Harper's Bazaar. They can come up with 1,000 reasons as to why, L'Oreal should spend money with Vogue instead of Harper's Bazaar. Great. They're both fashion magazines at the end of the day. They both have audiences and they both have readerships, and it's one look might be a little different, the font might be a little different. It's the same thing. So what I've always wanted to do is, how do you get to be the editor of every voice that is out there? Instagram is a new media platform with 1 billion people on it. How do you find the right people, because you get to edit them based on what your brand needs rather than them come to you? We have lots of clients that we do this like influencer triage for, where they see that, or an influencer will see that a brand is willing to pay people to do things, and they will just inundate them all day with, hey, this is me, here's my comp card, pay me this, I want to work with you, my audience is this. I really want to collect all these because they're hysterical, but I'm of the don't call us, we will call you mentality, which is also why we don't have a marketplace. We've worked with more than 25,000 people over the last several years. We might have worked with 1,000 more than once. There's so many people out there. There's so many voices to be shared. You want somebody in Omaha, we can find somebody in Omaha. You want somebody in rural Alberta, we can find somebody in rural Alberta. It doesn't matter. I would much rather do the choosing than be chosen. And that is a real difference from, it's a bottom-up approach rather than top-down. And the difference between macro and micro, there's more micros out there. And every day there's tens of thousands of more entering that landscape, and every day there's fewer and fewer and fewer kind of leaving that upper echelon. So it just really depends on what you want, but I would much rather be in the position to choose than be chosen.
I think the most successful influencers, the most successful people in the space are the ones whose it comes from their passion for the topic that they have, right? So, I wrote my book, which by the way is called Professional Blogging for Dummies. It's 10 years old. It's old. You can get it at the library. Was actually all about this, how to help. And I love the fact that this business actually pays people to create content, because it created a whole new revenue stream, particularly for women who are able to monetize, work at home, raise families, all those things and not necessarily be Avon ladies or telephone sales reps, which is the old things that they had to do instead of content creation. So for me, the fact that it's monetized and the authenticity comes always from it. If you ask them, survey after survey, you ask them, why do I do this? I do this to entertain, to inform, because I believe in, I want to share my opinions, I want to share my story, not because I'm going to get paid. Getting paid, it's never not on the list, but it always comes way down on the list for why people do this. So I think that we, as incumbent upon us to pick the right people, right? To know the difference between someone who's authentically engaged with our brand and someone who's just raising their hand because they have to pay the rent. And you can tell the difference. I think you can increasingly tell the difference between authentic passion for your brand, because that's what I look for when I'm trying to match influencers with brands, is someone who's passionately already engaged with this brand or engaged in that space or loves that brand, not because They think they're going to get paid because they just do. And, you know, it's not quite as good as Apple, where no one has to, you know, you have to hire influencers, or Harley Davidson, who has their own. But everybody loves something. And so it's not that hard to find people. Even Q-tips and Coca-Cola and Poland Spring Water have fans. And I think it's just incumbent on us to find them and tap into that.
On this positive note, I want to wrap things up. I want to give you all a chance to connect with each other more. So thank you to now 5 panelists, not just 4. Really fantastic. Thanks again to Simon Media for a really gracious team here, and even like Sam, Tech, and anyone here who's been part of this. Please eat, drink, be merry, and thank you all for coming and taking a chance on this gathering. So great to connect with you here.